Brothers Talk Show. Apologize, had a little frog in my throat. But my name is Sean Francis Coleman.
And I'm Darnell Ramsey. Welcome everybody. I hope everybody had an incredible day.
Yes. How was your day, sir?
My day was good. My day was good. I'm very, very excited about today's topic. This is one of my favorite topics. To the people who know me out there, people have talked to me over the last few years. They know how I feel about this exposure conversation, and I'm looking forward to taking some questions too. We're taking some comments too, and we'll talk about that later on. But before we get into that, how was your day, good brother?
It was well, man. It was well. I got exposed to some problems, but it also allowed me to have some time to myself. So one of the things I think I want to talk about too is how exposure to some problems is pivotal for improvement.
Right. And today's Daily Bread talked about God puts problems in our path so He can test your endurance. You understand? So welcome problems, because that's the only way your endurance is going to be really tested.
Right.
So I thought that was very interesting that you mentioned that, problems. Because some of us, the world is caving in when we get exposed to a problem.
Exactly.
But God just said that's another way to get your endurance and get your patience ready for the blessings that He has for you later on in life. So run that problem, never run away. That's my whole thing. No matter how hard or how whatever you're dealing with, always run toward the problem. When you run from it, when you come back, that problem's still there. And that's what I learned years ago. That you could escape, go on vacation. When you come back, the problem be at the airport.
Right.
With your last day.
You
back?
Right.
You back?
Right.
Yeah. So
you was at my house. Now you at the airport.
Well, I just want to make sure you had a good time. And I want to be the first one to welcome you back to the United States or wherever you went. Welcome back. Love you. But anyway, I always like to start off the show with a smile. But again, hope all's well, man. All's well. It's the springtime, starting to see the sun a little bit in Jersey, Pittsburgh. So that's always a blessing. The sun is exposing his face to us,
right?
His or her face to us as we enter into the spring season. So exposure. I know we took some notes and we almost filled up like 2 pages on exposure.
Power, man. The power of exposure. My gosh, that's a deep one, man. I know that you're excited. I'm excited too, and I hope that the listeners are excited. And we also want to not only talk about the power of exposure, but whenever I use that word power, people always say, "Man, you're such a strong brother, or you're a strong sister." I don't like strength. I think strength is okay, but I'd rather be powerful more than I am strong, because when people know you're strong, they'll come and dump their ish on you. You know what I mean? But when you're a powerful person, it's like in boxing. When you feel somebody's powerful jab, you're like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna stay right here. But whenever they strong, like, you know what? Darnell, he could deal with it.
Right.
He could deal with it.
Right.
But when you powerful, it's like, you know what? I ain't gonna do. The last time I tried to do that to him, I ain't like what happened.
Right.
So as we talk about the power, not the strength and exposure, but the power of exposure, we want you to apply this and to use it. So where would you like to start off, man? I mean, there's so many different places.
Exposure or the types of exposure.
Yeah.
The types of exposures, and one thing I'm just always like to use myself as an example, and what exposure did for me. And I'm just thinking from growing up in the housing projects, Pittsburgh, and family not having no money and never having an opportunity to take vacations. So when I'm dealing on her mentoring these young men, and I'm always talking to the moms or whatever, telling them about the importance of exposure. And I can go back to, I remember going off to boot camp. That was the first time I was ever on an airplane going into the military, and I was flying out to California. The crazy thing, we stopped over in Chicago, man. I remember I went to the bathroom and cried like crazy.
Really?
And I was bawling like crazy, snot coming out my nose. I was shook going out. But anyway, when I got to California, San Diego, I did boot camp out San Diego, and that was the first time, man, I seen a Filipino, a Dominican. You understand? I seen a beach. From there, Darnell Ramsey, mind just opened up. You understand? I'm like, wow, this exposure. Like, you go from ugly Pittsburgh, which is a gray, dreary, town, and at that time, Pittsburgh didn't have diversity. So, still Pittsburgh has lack of diversity, but, it was just strictly 20 some years ago, it was black, white. So when I go out to San Diego, and my company commander was a Filipino, and I remember like, what is that? You understand? Like,
you ain't never been exposed to it.
I ain't never been exposed to that. And this was a cool dude. He had this walk that I wanted to be like him. And I'm just, when I was in boot camp, we had Dominicans, we had Cubans.
Yeah.
I'm thinking in my company, and I'm like, wow, man. You understand? Because when you grow up in Pittsburgh, white is everything, and black is nothing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I got my first leadership position in boot camp. You know what I mean? They made me a leader, so I'm a leader over 100 people.
Right.
But not being exposed to like, wow, these people thought I was a leader. I didn't know, but because now I'm exposed like to different cultures. Not only that, exposed to leadership opportunities. That had an everlasting effect on me going into my young adult life. But because of that military experience, I tell people that started changing my life. Because again, most of my friends grew up in the projects. And, I didn't know like black people out here had money.
Right.
You understand? So when I was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, I used to go down to Virginia Beach, and there was black people with big houses. You understand? And I'm like, wow, now I can start to dream. Like, before I remember I just wanted to get a little job, and a little regular job in the hospital. Whether you had a hospital job back in the day, you thought you were making it. But I'm like, wow, black people live in 7-bedroom beach homes.
Right.
That exposure, that opened up my whole mind. The military just opened up my mind to see that there's unlimited possibilities out here. But if I wouldn't have been exposed to that,
right,
I wouldn't have had that opportunity to start dreaming. You know what I mean? So I just love that. Not love that, but I love the opportunity to have that exposure that the military afforded me.
And I think that's the power in it. I think that's the power in it because I wanted to go back to a little bit about you said you became a leader in the military, and it reminds me of a line that Joe Budden said in one of his songs. He said something about your heart will start throbbing, and whenever an opportunity presents itself, your legs will start wobbling. You know what I mean? So I think that whenever we get exposed to an opportunity like that, a lot of us don't have the courage, we don't have the preparation to actually take advantage of that. You know what I mean? So along with the power of exposure, you might find that wow, I'm not as strong. I'm a little bit weak. I'm a little bit weak. So sometimes the power of exposure can present you some of your weaknesses.
Oh, definitely. But as we talked before, you should welcome that.
Yeah, you should
because
welcome that.
As long as you breathe in, H2O.
Yeah.
You understand? That's water. But as long as you breathe in oxygen, I'm trying to get too
I said,
scientific. Yeah, bro. I'm dropping it. Like, you breathing water now? Young well. Yeah, I mean. But anyway, as long as you breathe in oxygen, you have an opportunity to improve.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that exposure, like you said, there's some things you're gonna realize. Some people who think you thorough, no knock on. We know certain people who, they got a couple dollars. They grew up in Pittsburgh, per se. But if you were to step outside and go to other metropolitan areas, you will realize that there are people beyond your level, even more intelligent, even more thorough than you.
Exactly.
So to your point, sometimes exposure causes for us to be humble. You know what I mean? Because if you limit yourself to a particular market, you might start to think that you're bigger than what you are.
Yeah.
So when you start to expose yourself, it really humbles you and it keep you grounded to where you should be anyway. So exposure has so many benefits. It opens up your mind. And that's the whole thing. Exposed. Your mind starts to open, and it's the unfortunate thing that we're talking about. I'm always, again, talking about how the military changed my life and exposure. So I'm always telling, mothers or parents to let your kid, leave home, whether it's going to school away from outside of Pittsburgh, well outside of Pittsburgh, or going into the military. That exposure is a life lesson that is priceless.
I don't know, where all of the listeners are coming from, but fortunately, my family always traveled. When I was a kid, my mother and father always exposed us to different cities, whether it was Chicago, Atlanta, Stone Mountain, DC. I mean, we just went to so many different places as a kid, and that was our way of life. We didn't know anything different. You know what I mean? So sometimes we took advantage of the exposure that we did have. But as I got into high school, I remember, and I might have told the story to you before, but I played for Peabody High School basketball team, and I'm on a bus, and one of my teammates was like, "Yeah, man, I'm going on vacation, bro." And he was like, I was like, "Yeah, where you going, man?" He said, "To the north side." And I'm thinking, "Oh, where? Like North Philly, right?" He was like, "Nah, to the north side." I'm thinking, whoa, like Garfield to the north side is 5 miles, dude. That's a vacation for you. But it goes to show you, like I always say, Pittsburgh has, all the cities I've been to, Pittsburgh has some of the most small-minded people, and people think that I'm hating on Pittsburgh. It's just that I've been exposed. Right. I've been exposed at a young age to things outside of Pittsburgh. Right. I've been exposed to things other than the Steelers, other than Permane Brothers, other than the North Side.
Still a nation? What? We rock with Still a Nation. We rock out with Still a Nation. Don't ever curse the Still a Nation again. Right. This whole world's about to say you can go to Baltimore and Still a Nation, right? You go all the way to Baltimore to find a Stiller bar. Are you serious? Are you serious? But we'll fall for the rest of the point. But that's powerful. I was having a conversation with a gentleman today, and he was saying that this guy that he had taken outside of talking from Allegheny County to another county. And he was saying this guy was in his 30s, and this is the first opportunity he had. Great brother, but this is the first time he'd been outside of Allegheny County. And I'm like, wow, man. And you hear these stories, the more, and that's why I wanted to talk about this exposure. The more you hear about it, as you enter into the game of life, you see how many people, to no fault of their own, and me and you, and we could talk about that today, because we go at it sometime about exposure. You know what I mean? We talk about certain kids in certain neighborhoods, and you feel very strongly about how, I don't care, man. They should be able to dream and get, think about, bigger and better things. But I say, what is their exposure? And sometimes, like you had just mentioned, your family did a wonderful job of exposing you at a young age. But as I always try to tell you, imagine if you grew up in, for me, you grew up in the hill or whatever, and your parents had no money, they never took you nowhere. How do you dream about moving to Chicago, living in Chicago, if you've never been outside the hill?
Ben Carson didn't. Ben Carson, and I don't want to necessarily get into the debate yet, if you don't want to, but Ben Carson, when I look at someone like Ben Carson, people say, well, he's an anomaly, but
which he is.
Well, he might be an anomaly, but but he also provides an example in the sense that it creates a pedestal for us to have more autonomy, to say, well, at least it's possible. And I know that because it's possible for one person, don't necessarily mean it's possible for us. But some of us are not even making the attempt to see if it's possible for us.
Can a child make the attempt, or their parent need to make the attempt to them? So when you talk about Ben Carson, when you look at the movie, Ben Carson's mother sent him to a very good school. So it wasn't like Ben Carson said, I want to go to his mother said, you're going to get to educated, and I'm going to expose you to a thing. We have a young man that helps us film. Even though his mother exposes him to different schools, but when I talk to her, like this guy, even though he might not have money, he's in a classroom with millionaire sons and family members. So you've been exposed to. So if you like when I was in the military, dude, my test score is higher than you. So I belong on the same level. You go to a Pittsburgh public school, who's in your classroom? People from your same neighborhood? People who have the same aspirations as you? As you have put, talked about the privilege of low expectations. Right. So how many doctors is coming out of Pittsburgh public schools, bro? Right. I ain't talking about one school. I'm talking about the whole goddamn school system that is of color.
That's a great
how many physicians?
Right.
I ain't talking about one school. I'm talking about the entire Pittsburgh public school system. How many surgeons come from this public school system?
Again, I think that's an excellent point. I guess all I'm saying is that and even though when I look at the average Pittsburgh and I see, wow, like you literally project what you've been saturated in. So to your point, yeah.
Say that again. Please say that. I like that word. It's saturated. Don't no, man. Stress that. Say that it's saturated. Not an anomaly. Right. Saturated.
Right. Yes, you can't project what you saturated in. But since we have this thing, like you say, called television, there's an opportunity for you to use an imagination.
Okay.
And the power of an imagination. Like, I feel like that's the whole thing in itself. Like, you know what I mean?
True.
You know
that's true.
But so
what? My fault. Cut out. Why are you making that point? So that television. What are they watching on television?
Right.
Somebody dribbling the basketball. Somebody rapping.
At the same time. Okay, go ahead. At the same time, I felt like even if it's a commercial, or even if you seeing this basketball player live a type of lifestyle that you ain't living, you seeing something else that you can't use. You can't use like that little 20 seconds or 10 seconds. Like you didn't passed over everything. I understand that repetition and the images in your life, create, you know what I'm saying, your perception and your perspective and your worldview. But we can't miss out on that little bit of visual information that, hey, there's something else outside of Pittsburgh or my community than this.
And I love the fact that, you always dropping some jewels. The example you use is television, right?
Uh-huh.
But what do you saturate? What is saturating your community? So what channel, out of 2,000 channels, what channels are you going to watch?
That's what I just said.
BET,
right?
And ESPN. Uh-huh. Even though there's the Discovery Channel, the Science Channel there, because your mind is saturated with entertainment and being a monkey, being a rapper or being a basketball player, that's what you're going to watch. That's what you're going to watch.
I mean, I can't say right to that. Again, it goes to the person. I would say, to your point, I don't want to disagree totally. I think that if you are not a strong-minded person, if you're not your own person, if you're not an individual, and you are not confident, that I can see how you can let those things subvert your own thinking. But me, even though I came from, I ain't gonna say a better household, but I came from a pretty solid household. But it's not like my dad was sitting there like, hey, let's watch the Cosby Show 20 hours a day. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Let's watch. Like, we were still watching basketball and all that. And I was an athlete all my life, but I remember telling myself at like 12 years old, like, I never want to use my athletic skills to become famous. So I never want to use my athletic skills. Like, I want to get to wherever I'm going, no matter what level it is, based off my mind.
Okay.
Go ahead.
But I'm coming back to what was Sean's exposure? So Sean's exposure, maybe you seen some of those travels of Detroit, those travels of Chicago. You used to say y'all drive. Somebody, you seen something like, I don't want to. But when you getting out of your community, when you getting up out of your bed, you walk past 200 drunkards or drug addicts, you go to a school that there's no man that look like you, then you come back and see the same drug addicts, drug dealers. What is your exposure?
Right, dude. But I mean, I was exposed to that same thing, and again, I'm not gonna take any credit away from the challenging things that my parents did do. That I guess what I'm saying is there's a period in my life. I don't want to universalize my experience, but I think that, and again, I would say that there might have been a period in your life, because you're not like some of the minds that we've grown up around. There's a period in your life where you go, you know what? Do I want this for myself? Or don't I? And that's the moment where you be like, or
true.
Where you're gonna allow yourself to be subverted, like I said, and you're gonna go with it in that particular path. You're gonna see, I'm gonna have the courage to be who I am, and you're probably gonna be flip flop and back and forth for a certain amount of years, but I still can't not hold somebody accountable for just because you was born in this situation and environment. If that's the case, then we can't expect nothing from.
But there's out there, and I come back to of course we're using Pittsburgh language, so some of our viewers who are outside of Pittsburgh might not know some of the neighborhoods, but I'm coming back to, I grew up in the Hill, and then you got Mount Lebanon and Upper St. Clair, some of the more affluent neighborhoods. So even if you never travel nowhere, Sean, the school systems, and that's what me and you talk about, the Pittsburgh public school system in Mount Lebanon, there's gonna be a whole different career set in Mount Lebanon that you're gonna be exposed to. So from ages kindergarten to 12, you might be exposed to neurosurgeons, people that own businesses, big executives in corporate America, versus in Pittsburgh public schools, becoming a school teacher or getting a job that might be making $70,000 is huge to you. Versus in Mount Lebanon, that's the bottom expected.
Exactly.
You ain't, you expected to make $100,000 by the time you're 25, 26. Coming through a Pittsburgh public school system, you'd be lucky as heck to make $100,000 throughout your entire life.
And when you get it, you're happy about it.
You have made it. You have arrived. So to my point, exposure. I totally agree with you wholeheartedly. It's up to you. It is up to you. However, don't make it like these people out. Certain people that because exposure ain't something somebody's telling you. It's just when you look around, that's your way of life. You know what I mean? Exposure ain't something that your parents forced on you. It's your way of life. So when you grow up in certain neighborhoods or certain areas where your way of life, you got more affluent people around you, you might be, well, you won't have the mindset that this is what I'm supposed to become. But when you grow up in certain neighborhoods, when everybody's dribbling on the basketball, everybody's, wanting to be a rapper, that's what you might think that that's what you might put limitations on yourself because you're not exposing yourself to different things. Now, of course, there are some outliers and anomalies. I definitely agree with that. But to me, the large majority rules. There's a reason why we had that conversation. There's a reason why certain people, grow up in certain neighborhoods, affluent neighborhoods, why they don't end up in these these inner city neighborhoods. There's a reason why. And I would love. I was talking about. I need some statistics. But how many people growing up in certain poor, impoverished neighborhoods spend generations in that? Because I look at some of the people I grew up in, they still in the same neighborhood.
Yeah,
they still in the same neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going against that. I'm not going against that, but I think it's good to have perspectives like mine, and no disrespect to yours.
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
Because I don't like one of my clients. I had a conversation with her on Saturday or Sunday, and she writes like she's not aware. She's in her she's in her early 40s, and she has a great ability to write, and she's nobody's ever told her. Like I'm reading her stuff. She has poems that I'm like, wow, like this is this is like immense. You know what I mean? But she asked me. She said, "Are you BSing me?" And I'm like, "Nah, this is great stuff." And she said, "Well, you're always giving me these compliments. You're always trying to pull these great things out of me. And one thing about me is that I'm not going to spend too much time in the issue, in the problem. Once we figure out what the problem is, we immediately going to start trying to find the solution." Right. And so I definitely want to validate you and say, yes, those things do contribute to the problem. But I'm just the type of person that I don't stay there very long.
Okay.
I don't stay there very long.
You're not supposed to.
Right. So at the end of the day, yes, you are very accurate whenever you bring up a lot of these things. But I believe that a question that gets asked in Homewood schools and a question that gets asked in Upper St. Clair schools is, what do you want to be one day? What do you want to be one day?
But I remember our famous, he's online, I hope he's online, brother Sean McCaskill, one of the activities that he told me to do, that, he goes to schools when he's doing these leadership workshops and he's told people to close their eyes. You know what I mean? So when you close your eyes, when you come from an inner city, when you come from when you close your eyes and you look at the neighbor to your right, the neighbor to your left, the neighbor to your far right, what are those? What are those people? What are their professions? Then you come from the inner city, you close your eyes. What are the occupations of the people to your right, to your left? And unfortunately, that's who you are. That is who you are.
Really?
Majority of times, that's who you are.
That's who you choose it because you can also say, I don't like this. You know what I mean?
Definitely. We have a question that came up on the chat room. I know that we want to go to commercial break. I'm gonna get to this question when we come back from our commercial. But we actually, I know last time we took some calls at the latter part of the show. We would like to take a couple of callers when we come back from commercial break. However, we sometimes we have a lot of callers in the queue. We're not able to get back to them, so we don't mean to want to apologize in advance if we cut you off and your point get too long with it. But we want to hear back from you all when we come back off commercial break. Of course, the people who are listening online, call 929-477-3860, or the people who have called in, you can press #1 to get in the queue, and we will try our best to get to your line. I'm going to get to your answer, get to your call. But we're going to go to commercial break at this time, and we'll be back with the Good Brother Conversations with Good Brother show, talking about exposure and why it's important.
Power of exposure.
I'm Carrie Washington.
That's it. It's from chat room. Somebody said, what do you think comes first, curiosity, or does exposure foster exposure? For example, it's like you said, some people might say, what else is out there? Or some people need to be exposed to something, and then they have a desire to learn more. That's a good point. That's what you're saying too. Like there's a natural people, people that like, there gotta be something else out there. There gotta be something out there. But that's a good point. But do you have to be exposed to say that's out there?
Let me address that.
You want to read it or want me to read it?
Yeah.
Welcome back to the conversation with good brother Schultz, Darnell Ramsey.
And Sean Francis Coleman.
We're gonna jump back into. We have something in the chat. A question coming in the chat room that says, "What do you think comes first, curiosity, or does exposure foster more exposure? For example, some people are more curious about what else is out there, or some people need to be exposed first before they have a desire to want more." So I know we talked about that during commercial break. What I know you want to talk about that. Go ahead and.
Yeah, I think that's a phenomenal question. To address the first part, what comes first? Is it curiosity or is it the exposure? I don't really know, but if I had to answer that, I might say that the exposure comes first, and maybe the curiosity comes out of that. You know, when you're exposed to a situation like Darnell was saying, you know, about Brother McCaskill. If I see my neighbors on both sides of me and I don't like that, you know, I might be curious. Like, is this really what I want to be? Because you said that, you know, you said that because that's who you are. In my opinion, is like that might be an example of what you don't want to be.
Good point.
You know what I mean? So out of that, I remember I talked to a brother up in Penn Hills, and he was saying that he didn't grow up with a father, but he saw his friend's father and he saw his friend's uncle, and they were good examples of what he wanted to be. So he emulated his style as a man after them. So curiosity for him was developed after what he was not exposed to, which is still an exposure. So, and I think that's the power. And again, I think Darnell, you bring up some excellent points. You know, but this is the power of books. I might not live in Upper St. Clair, but guess what? Like just like on a Gifted Hands, when I open up that book, I can go wherever I want to. And I might not be the best reader as somebody in my community. I might not be the best reader as somebody in Mount Lebanon. But this is, I think this is like I said last week. You have libraries. You have these programs. Use what you do have, and that power of imagination. Remember the part where Dr. Bismon was like, you know, you can go wherever you want to if you open that book.
Who you talking about though?
Right.
Who you talking about though? So you just said he just grabbed a book, or his mother said, go to that book, learn to read, or you can. She fed into that. So I'm thinking sometimes when you and I are talking, you think that a 4-year-old kid gonna go to the library, or your mother have to say, son, go to the library, because some of our schools don't even have got daggone libraries, which is
Talk about our communities.
Some of our communities don't have libraries.
But see, we can always find
Excuses. Yeah.
And like I said,
but you know, so these communities are just because there is they are, but you know, not just Pittsburgh, Chicago. They are what they are. No, it's the people's fault.
Oh, partially yes.
Partially yes,
yes,
but it's
and
not,
you know what?
Not by design.
Partially yes, and you know that's where the accountability piece comes, because these communities are the way they are. Yes, I'm saying a lot of this. Of course, there's things that we're exposed to and that have been placed on us, but we accept it too. We accept it.
I'm gonna get to this comment, and we're gonna come back to this comment. That says exposure is beneficial for all socioeconomic statuses. I think people should go outside their comfort zone and zip codes and learn from various cultures to help transform humanity. And the person who wrote that in, you are so true. I think, again, like I mentioned before, when I went into the military and I seen all these different cultures, man, that blew my mind. But to Sean's point, I remember I used to, you know, everybody around me wore uniforms. You understand? So nobody told me about it, but as a kid, I said, you know what, I want to wear a suit and tie when I get older. That was just, you know, I think one of our callers made a comment early, like, I didn't need somebody, I guess I wasn't exposed, but I knew something about a uniform that I didn't want to be that. You understand? I wouldn't need, so there are exceptions to the rules, but to me, I'm looking at, when I say majority rules, we can find 2 or 3 or 10 examples, but what about the 990 other examples?
I don't agree with that. Like, when you say majority rules, listen, you have a choice. Like, when you say majority rules or subject to the rule, to me, I go, hold on, what is the rule? That's the rule. Who made that rule? You know what I mean? Like this is a rule. This is a rule for the majority. This is not a rule for Sean Francis Coleman. And again, maybe that comes with personality, some people's upbringing, and X, Y, and Z. But when you talk about the rule, like the rule for the majority is not necessarily the rule for myself.
And it never should be the rule. I know my pastor this week talked about thinking outside. Don't box yourself in. So when we talk about the rules of the game tell you that you're supposed to be boxed in. But to your point, the people that get outside of these situations are the ones who are willing to step out the box. But the system, and it's not a black-white thing. The system is totally telling you to stay in that box. But how many of us are courageous to step outside that box?
That's that word. Courage.
Right.
Yeah, that's that word.
But courage is not promoted because you're also going to be ostracized when you decide to expose yourself. You know, when you want to go to school, you talk different. You know what I mean? You talk white. You got to hear, what? He's different. But you got to be ready to be criticized and ostracized when you step outside that box. But do we promote courage or we promote fear? We talked about that a couple shows ago about fear. Your parents tell you, go with the system. So you end up being, that fear is inflicted on you. So we don't talk about being courageous and thinking outside of our norm. We don't naturally talk about that. Matter of fact, the people who are, they're labeled. You know what I mean? And I ain't saying great labels neither. You know what I mean? They're criticized for thinking different.
And I don't think we should talk about that in a fearful. Not that you ain't talking about it in a fearful way, but I don't think we should talk about that in a fearful way. But again, the more and more that I continue to learn about life and to learn about myself, at the age that I'm at, I do become aware that some of us are a little bit more courageous than others. Some of us are maybe a little bit more dominant. Some of us are a little bit more aggressive than others.
Yes.
But maybe I'm not as empathetic. I don't understand the benefits of spending too much time in a depressive state. Maybe I don't understand the benefits of worrying too much about not being courageous and about people saying what they're going to say. Life is. My neighbor said to me, he's like, yo, Sean, I'm 70-something years old. He said, do you realize that the dinosaurs lived for like thousands of years? He said, life is so short, it's ridiculous. So I don't want to negate what you're saying, but at the same time, we really don't have time to be spending talking about what the issue is. Like some of us, some of you are out there having an innate desire, and to the first person's question, I think that there might be a case where you just might have an innate desire, no matter what your situation is. You might not even be cognizant that there are problems, but you just have an innate desire for your soul to just gravitate towards certain things. And that's also very possible. And in that regard, I would say that exposure or whatever might not come first. You just naturally want more for yourself.
And the beautiful thing that God says that we all have that innate desire. Some of us just don't have the courage to go and do it. And we're about to go to another commercial, and I'm really appreciating. I'm not a commercial. We're gonna take another call or another question on the chat room. But thank you all so very much for chatting in. But from the chat room, it says just because you are wealthy does not mean you are exposed.
So true.
People get stuck in their bubble no matter what their financial status is. Exposure fosters education and encourages people to have an open mind. So to our point, whoever that comments, thank you so very much. That's the whole point of exposure. Exposure is education. Exposure allows you to open up your mind. So education is not just book smart. Exposure is like open up your mind to something new.
Right.
And whenever you learn something,
right.
That's exposure. That's education.
Right.
Let's not limit education to somebody getting some degrees or reading some book knowledge. You're right. Being exposed to something and you have like, I want to learn that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like to me, when I went off to boot camp, I didn't get mad at seeing a Filipino or I'm like, wow.
Right.
Let me talk to you. How do you live? What do you eat?
Right.
You understand? But unfortunately, if you the points that you're making, if you're not willing to accept that and embrace that, you're not. You're killing yourself. You're not educating yourself on all the opportunities and possibilities that are out here. And I'm thinking about some of our friends who are online. We talk about when people are going off to school. One of the things that troubles me is that a lot of our kids go off to school 20 miles up the road. And then every weekend, you're in college, which you're exposed to a whole different world. You're coming right back home to kick it with your friends or kick it with your mom. That's a great opportunity for you to be exposed. And again, as a parent, as a mentor, I'm big on, sending kids away from home and don't let them come back. Don't come back. Because that's an opportunity. You can educate and be exposed to them. You know everything about Pittsburgh. Or you know about everything for my Lincolnites on the phone, I got my Lincoln sweatshirt on today. But we used to get a lot of people come from Philly, and then every weekend they used to go home. Like, dude, you from Philly? Young lady, you from Philly? Why you going? No, go to Jersey, go to Maryland, go to Baltimore, go to Florida.
Right.
Go somewhere else. Expose yourself. But again, that courage, or I love that way you said what we call it, the privilege of low expectation. That is like it's another word for fear. That we get in that box, like the person, one of our callers said, we get into that box and we limit ourselves to being exposed to our norm. That norm is, that norm will kill you, man.
Which goes to another point about power. I remember when I've been exposed to different cities, and like I love how the last person who gave us that comment and question, because I was just about to say that too. I kid you not, I was just about to tell Darnell, like, listen, just because you got money or just because you come from these communities don't mean that you have the best exposure. Right. Because you could also have exposure to some things that you don't want, like drugs, like we said last week. But I remember whenever I went to, me and my wife got married where she's from over in the Virgin Islands, and I was tough. When I came back, I had to talk to this group of kids who were incarcerated, and they were so bent on repping their hood. Like, I remember I'm in my hood all day. I'm like, really? I'm like, dude, when you get exposed to different pockets of earth, like I can every day I wake up. I got married 3 years ago, but I still wake up seeing that pocket of earth that me and my wife got married on, and we try to go there as much as possible because we've been exposed to it. And then what my wife always clowned me for, she's like, Sean, I got to expose you to something else, because every time she showed me something new, I'm like, I want to go back here. She's like, nah, man, like, listen, there's other places. Right. Now I'm kind of addicted to getting exposed to different places. Right. And I'm not just closed-minded, like, no disrespect to a lot of Pittsburghers are. So you can kind of exposure is so powerful because, like you said, like we're trying to tell the callers, is that it just gives you a different way of seeing other people live and the experiences that come from it. I think another aspect of exposure is that it can also bring experience that might you literally exposed. You know what I'm saying? Like in the boxing ring, you're catching, I'm gonna expose you. When you get exposed, it's like, wow. I remember one time when you was talking, man, and you said to me, explain yourself. And I ain't had nothing to say. And I was like, yo, I'm never gonna let that happen to me again. So when I'm released around Darnell Ramsey, I know I gotta be ready to explain my point. And since then, I think that I've gained a lot as a man, as a person, because you kind of exposed me at that time of conversation.
That's different. That being exposed a little too much because you're not ready, and be careful what you ask for, because you might get exposed to an opportunity you're not really ready. But I tell people, all the parents out there who have young men or young ladies who are undecided on what their next career and they're at the tip of going off to college, I recommend the military, because as you sitting here talking, I remember the first time going to St. Thomas. So the reason why I went to Cuba and I traveled the world, went to Italy, all these different places, but the reason why I go to the Caribbeans every year is because of my exposure from the military, and I fell in love with the blue water. Yeah. I've been back there, Cancun about 3 or 4 times, been to Jamaica like 8 times. So one of the ladies, one of these beautiful ladies that I had the opportunity to build with, she's like, why you keep going back to the same places? Right. You know what I mean? Because I got exposed to Jamaica. I thought I was a Rasta. You know what I mean? But like, dude, she was like, there's a whole different world. Have you hit South America? Have you hit Central America? Right. So now I'm like, she was like, don't never go back to the same place twice. Right. You know what I mean? See the whole world. I'm like, thank you. So now I got this huge wish list, but that's exposure. But I see the beauty of exposure. Right. I see the beauty, because to one of our people that called in from a chat room, some people get so used to that norm that exposure is scary, because that exposure might expose you. Right. You know what I mean? Right. And because being exposure really causes you to be exposed. Yeah, it does. You know what I mean? So a lot of us don't want to be exposed. So it's okay to be, I want to be comfortable. Yeah. I want to stay comfortable. Right. I want to stay in my comfort zone. Right. You know what I mean? But that's a whole issue in itself. Like, how do you have the courage to step out your comfort zone?
Indeed, and that's my thing. Whenever you always talk about our community and all these things that were saturated, and that's kind of my point to you, in the sense that at some point it's a choice to stay in that period because you're comfortable with that. You know what I mean? Like even people who experience clinical depression. Like
Mm-hmm.
at some point, like you are making a decision to stay at this because you have more. A lot of people have such a strong relationship with their pain that the idea of recovery is so far down the road that it no longer exists. Let me say that one more time. Sometimes people have such a strong relationship with their pain and with trauma and with their problems is that the idea of recovery is so far down the road that it doesn't even exist. But you got to be held accountable for that. So whenever people start, I always say, whenever people start offering you solutions to problems, that's whenever people start having problems with your solutions.
Say that again.
Whenever we have all these think tanks and all these things, you know what I'm saying? But whenever people start offering you solutions to your problems, you find people start having problems with your solutions.
And then, wow, I got to think about how I'm trying to say that. I always say that Brother Malcolm say that you can't even find this, you can't work on a solution until you understand, if you can't work on a solution, you recognize the problem. But like you said, we want the problem.
Yeah.
And people like me, when I have a problem, and people know I'm not, at certain times I'm not a good listener because I'm always, all right, the problem, but it's a solution.
Right.
You're not being sensitive. So you want me to fester in the problem.
Right.
I can't do that because
Right.
I'm off to the solution.
Right.
I acknowledge the problem. I don't want to make it like I'm insensitive and I don't know the problem, but obviously, eventually we have to get to the solution.
Right.
So I want to jump to the solution.
Right.
You know what I mean? But a lot of times people don't want that. So that's the norm. I
It's
operate
unconscious.
well
Yeah.
in problems.
Ooh. And it's unconscious too.
Mhm.
And sometimes you might get exposed to the sickness, and the doctor tell you, look, all right, you've been exposed. Go home and take this 2 times a day for 4 weeks, and you'll be cool. You take it for 4 days, don't see much change. You're like, nah, I ain't me. Yes, I'm cool. I got it.
Because I like this.
Yeah.
I like this.
People. I think we said it a couple weeks ago. People, you resisting the cure because you insist on that pain, man. I just don't.
But I'm coming back to what happens when your exposure lets you, or your exposure keeps you there because that's where they are at. That's where we operate. When you coming back, and we coming back to these communities.
Mm-hmm.
You understand, like. Somebody said that before. I'm not taking somebody's term, but we function so well in dysfunctionality. We function well there. So if that's normal to you, what do you do from there? If that's normal to you, so you might not even see like, hold up, I wanna work on a solution, but nobody around me is encouraging me to pursue this solution. So that is your norm. You understand? But again, we coming back to that courage. I think somebody, I wish I could have an illustration, but we're not there yet. But I remember this one guy showed, your comfort zone. He drove he made 2 circles, made a small circle, say your comfort zone, and drew a bigger circle outside of that. He's like, that's the rest of the world. But we operate well in that little circle. You understand? And we don't necessarily jump out of our norm. Real quick, we're gonna take a call. We have a caller with the last 4 3686. Caller 3686. Tell us your name and where you're from. Yes.
Hi, my name is Tanya Sullivan, and I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
How are you?
What's up, Ton?
I'm the cousin of Darnell.
How you doing, love?
I'm doing good. I'm actually calling in regards to exposure.
Okay.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm actually from Pittsburgh, born and raised there. I'm actually now residing in Texas, and mine is exposure with a curiosity in mind. So we're talking about Pittsburgh. We've been, lived in Pittsburgh my whole life, and being exposed to different cultures now within Houston, because I'm now unattended, and I left here, Pittsburgh, in 2002.
Okay.
And there's a lot more to see besides Pittsburgh. I'm sure people, would actually take that into consideration that there is a lot of exposure, different cultures, very different places, that's such a curiosity.
Thank you very much for that, Ton. And that's what we talk about that. You have to want it. And I think that's Sean's point. Like you have to want to be exposed, and that's that's that courage thing too, Sean. You know, what I mean, that you talk about that. But I think that how do you create that courage? How do you promote that courage? How do you teach people to be courageous? Like, and that's something because you gotta want to step outside your norm.
Well, I think that the same way, and this is the draft, the same way where somebody has the courage to pull a gun and take somebody's life. If you have the courage to pull a gun and take somebody's life, you have some type of courage.
Okay.
And I think that we forget that. I think that we sometimes forget in our communities that the same way that Darnell is a mentor to me and he gives me coaching. There's people who are coaching up these sociopathic kids too. We all know about these kids. These kids ain't out here just growing up. Half these kids who are killing are not real killers. Whenever you shoot somebody and you post it on Facebook, you're not a real killer to me. But whenever that's your lifestyle, you got to be bred into that. You know what I'm saying? Like, and there's a level of courage there that goes with taking somebody's life. So that same type of courage can be applied in other ways. Now that's just one example. But I also wanted to address it by saying by going to something that you said about the circle. Okay. How your this is your circle, and then you have a bigger circle, which is the whole world.
I want to again thank you, Tom, for calling in. Thank you for your comments. Always appreciate calling.
Very much.
Looking forward to talking to you, Tom. Thank you again. Appreciate your comments.
Yeah. So I thought this actually applied to what your question in reference to what Sister Tanya was saying. Because you said, well, how do we promote that courage? And I think one of the ways it goes back to what you were saying about the circle. Just because this is your circle and this is the rest of the world, I heard Dr. Kimbrough, he had a quote one time that says, "When you're the smartest person in your group, you need to get a new group." And also, look at your success circle. Like my thing about a success circle is that you're in a healthy success circle, and if you have people that challenge you to go into your areas of difficulty and succeed there.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Whenever somebody's consistently challenge you to, you don't do that well, I'm gonna put you in a situation where you got to do that. That's when you know you're in a success circle.
You don't like me, man. You know what I mean? But I don't want to be in a success circle.
Right.
You understand? Because now you get me out of my comfort zone.
Right.
And I might take that as like you said, you got to want that.
Right.
But that's somebody who really loves me versus you, a person who's not who want to stay in a certain area or a certain norm. They won't see the benefit of that.
Yeah, right.
So there's a reason why successful people are who they are. Where they're at, and there's a reason why people who are not successful. Yeah. But and of course, success has nothing to do with money. Success is just following your dreams. Yeah. Is that you didn't have a person pushing you or encourage you to get exposed to that type of life that you want. But we and I'm coming. I like how I come up because you asked me questions like what made you do certain things, because I wasn't exposed from not having a father. Why did I want to be a father to my children? I don't know. But when I look back at some of the things where people always say, man, you would try anything, and to this day I still do that. Is that something that God put in me, or is that something that you can just say, you know what, I just want to be courageous? Because I'm thinking that I don't think that's the normacy for people, because there's so many people who refuse to change their circumstances no matter what it is. You understand? So do you think that you can just read a book on courage and become courageous, or that's just embedded in you?
I don't know, but you know what I just to respond to you. I think part of the crux of what we're saying is in what you just said about you not having a dad. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody gets exposed. Everybody. Whether it's what you are exposed to, what you're not exposed to. I was exposed to having a dad there. You were exposed to not having a dad.
Right.
Whatever grows out of this, and I remember Minister Farrakhan said, we all born with problems. We're all born with problems. So we just happen to be exposed to two different situations.
Right.
So I don't think one is better than the other.
Right.
Whatever grows from what you have, it could be great, or it could be a failure.
Right.
Either way, it's going to be something. Just like I heard one time where if you have two plants and one grows in healthy water and one grows up in dirty water, they both going to grow. They're just going to grow differently. But they won't grow.
Right. And we talk about that all the time. Is that I wanted to talk about one of my workshops that you shouldn't compare your growth to somebody else. That's when you don't value your growth. Right. You understand? So again, swing this back to the importance of exposure. You know, I'm gonna talk about that a little bit. Where as parents, you know, it is our job. You know, kids can go to the library, you understand, and check a book out, but you know, some kids might need to be motivated to go get this exposure. To your point, I remember, growing up in elementary school. You know, went to a Pittsburgh public school, but I remember Mr. Ambrose, who was a social studies, he used to always tell us to dream. But this is before television. This is before PlayStation. This is before cell phones and computers as well. So, you know, you wasn't seeing all these, these instant visions that you can go online and pull up a picture of the ocean by Googling it. You had to grab a book. You understand? I always tell people, you know, every parent out there who's on the phone, you know, I say the most important toy that you can buy your child at Christmas is a picture, is a globe or a map. You understand? You know, forget a PlayStation game, forget a pair of Jordans. Buy your kid your child the biggest map that you can find and put them in the right. I learned that from a doctor from my last job. That's what she tell all of her patients. Buy your children a map. Because that way now you're being exposed to the world. Because if you know, of all you see is Homewood, of all you see is Pittsburgh, I always tell, I tell my son and my daughter, I got a big picture, a map in my room. Find the Hill District on that map.
Right.
You won't.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I got like a small map, you know, but our kids and people need to see how big the world is.
Right.
And that's huge because a lot of times, you know, in social studies, I don't know if they're doing that anymore, you had to name the 50 states and their capitals.
Right.
I haven't been in social studies class in so long, but that alone is the beginning to a child being exposed.
Right.
So the child might come home and say, hey mom, I learned about Afghanistan, you know where that's at?
Right.
Nah, Google it.
Right.
So now you get your kid to start being exposed to the different cultures and the different parts of the world that are out there. But all you know is this small town, no matter whether you're Atlanta, DC, Chicago, if all you know is like this small area, you know, your exposure is limited. So, you know, those are one of the things I'm huge on. Everybody needs a map.
I feel like that's what I was saying though, as your teacher talked about, Mr. Ambrose talked about dreaming, that's what I was saying earlier as we were talking about holding people accountable, is just that you can use that imagination. And even though like you were saying, like, you know, homeless schools might not be upper St. Clair schools, you still exposed to going to school, because school might be a better situation than your home environment. And you get to go to school. There's some people in these other countries who are not exposed to going to school. So I'm not gonna not hold you accountable because your school got books from 1995 and Upper St. Clair got books from 2013. Nah. You going to school.
Right.
And I also think that in reference to what you was talking about as far as you were saying something as far as schools. And what was the last point that you had made? That you talking about exposure?
About the importance of having a map? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so actually I quoted you in my book because you had made a heck of a comment one time as we were giving this young lady coaching. And you had said very poignantly and vividly, when you look at a map, you get an idea of how big God is. You know what I'm saying? So to your point, and to bring that together with what you said about Dr. Ambrose, in the sense that, you know, you got YouTube. There's no excuse that I want to hear. I'll listen to it for a certain amount of time, but you got YouTube. You can see how the people living. It's not like it was 15, 20 years ago where you got to open a book, see the picture. Now you can actually see how people live. I'm like, oh dang, they doing this down in South Cali.
Right.
Oh, they doing this over in Africa. Like there's so many.
But I'm on YouTube looking at World Star Hip Hop.
Right, and that's the choice that you made.
Yeah, but because that's what my environment is exposed to. But it's still a choice you make coming back to that. But our exposure, to your point, is, you know, because I'm seeing fights in my school, I'm seeing fights in my community.
Right.
Like you said, I ain't gonna Google, life in, South Beach, Miami, or whatever part of where you can see so true. And that's an unfortunate thing. This computer is a whole exposure to the world. But you had made a point. Just add on to what you're saying. In church this past Sunday, where it's amazing. I said that before, but one of my pastor talked about when you box God in, you box yourself in. To my point when we were saying how when you see a picture of the world, you realize how big God is.
Right.
God created this. However, when you put God in the box, you box yourself.
Right.
But a lot of us don't want to. Again, we. How do you work on a solution when you only see a problem like that? You boxing God in? The creator of all this? You know what I mean? You ain't even given an opportunity to say, why can't I go to You know, why can't I go to Amsterdam?
Right.
But that ain't for me. That's for somebody else. Is that to your point? Is that a cop out?
Yeah.
Or is that or somebody, or is that you? Well, that is you putting limitation on yourself, or somebody punished you and told you that you can't go there.
That's funny that you said about putting God in a box, because I heard Pastor T.D. Jakes say how people always have these excuses like, well, I know, well, God knows, well, God's in my heart. I got God's in my heart. He said, well, God got company. You know what I'm saying? Because you also got that other voice in you telling you what you can't do.
Right.
So yeah, God's in my heart, but God got company.
We don't want to talk about that.
We don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Hey, man, I just want to say too, man. As we start to wind down, I enjoyed these conversations with you, man. You are a great brother, man. I have a lot of respect for your character, and it's just been a privilege. Brother Darnell and I have been having these conversations. I think I met you. It seemed like I know you my whole life, but I think I met you about 4.5, 5 years ago, and we've been having these conversations for years.
Yeah. Our conversation.
Right. And I want to continue to reiterate that if you get a chance to get some coaching from him, and also from myself, it's just a privilege for me. I'll speak for myself. It's a privilege to be able to have these conversations with you, have you hold me accountable. We do butt heads sometimes,
and that's a good thing.
But it's in a respectful way.
Yes,
you know what I mean? And it's like,
disagree.
Yeah. So I thank God for being exposed to you. Just as much as I do my family, we also I have a strong belief to say they always say it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a village to destroy one. I say too.
Yes.
So I'm definitely thankful for my exposure to.
I like that, and also it's a two-way street. Same way I tell my kids, tell my son and my daughter. Like I learned, I think parenting is a two-way street where I learn from my son and my daughter just as much as they learn from me, and the same vice versa with you. Like you give me so many perspectives on your perspectives on different avenues that I can look at, and I respect that. And I tell you all the time about how your family, how they raise you. That sparks my curiosity, and that's something that I love to talk about with you and get your experience, because that is a complete that's totally different from how I was raised, and the majority of people that I was raised, but we still connect. So in addition to this exposure, even though we have two total different lifestyles or two different exposure, we're still able to connect.
Right.
And that's the beautiful thing about it, because we're educated. Exposure,
right.
Because you're exposure over here, I'm exposure over there, we're still educated.
Right.
And we can always connect on something because of our exposure.
Right.
So once again, parents, parents, teachers, whoever's online, supervisor, whatever, encourage the youth, encourage adults, because exposure just don't as long as you're waking up and breathing air, you should be opening your mind and being educated and being look forward to exposure, because until God takes your last breath away from you, always continue to learn and always be willing to being open to being exposed.
Yes. Give God a reason to expose you to tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah, give
God.
God.
Leave on that note, man. How you gonna just stop right there and the show's almost over like in 30 seconds? That's a great point, man.
Yeah.
Here we got a reason to expose, and what are you doing?
Yes, we will see you again next week. My name is Sean Francis Coleman.